good morning or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. We all experience a difficult awakening, not only after a festive evening or after a late sleep. Even after a long and well-resting night, we may be groggy, not fully awake during a more or less period. We can't forget to put the cup on the coffee machine. We can use a face cream instead of the toothpaste. We can look at something without really looking at it. We have an irresistible desire to continue to sleep. We hurry in the shower with a PJM. It is the symptoms of sleep inertia. When it is severe, this is a famous morning drunkenness. But the morning in the aircraft could be at any time, after a nap or after a rest in a CRC. The goal today is to make pilots aware of this human phenomenon, because knowing why and how it works can contribute to better manage sleep inertia and to find some tips to reduce it. So what is sleep inertia? Let's quiz on science. Sometimes after waking up, we are groggy or not. We are more or less groggy. Why? 4 reasons may increase sleep inertia, and they are in this list. Which ones? It is because we sleep in a dark and silent area? No. Dark and silent area just eases falling asleep and maintains sleep. Do we experience sleep inertia when we wake up from deep sleep? Here, this is the language of our brain. This is electrical signature. We observe that the brain has various languages, and it's depending on our level of awakening. The first one is when we are awake. The second one is when we are relaxed or meditating. The third one is the stages 1 and 2 of the light sleep. It is when we have body spasm, breathing, heart rate are slow, temperature decreasing, etc., etc. And if we wake up from these phases, there is no sleep inertia. Stages 3 and 4 are the deep sleep phases. This is the phases where it is hardest to wake from, and there is different symptoms of this sleep phases. And the last phase is REM, and this is the last phase where we dream and eyes are very dynamic. If we raise up the eyelid, we will see the eyes moving in every direction. Deep sleep stages and REM are the more restorative phases. And if you wake up from these phases, there is sleep inertia. We can see that the brain language is different for the deep sleep. This is delta waves, high amplitude, low frequency. The delta waves are very slow. The brain seems working differently. Academic researchers conclude that awakening from deep sleep stages and REM is a main factor of sleep inertia. Do we experience sleep inertia because a heavy meal before a nap? An heavy meal only disturbs the sleep and the access to the deep sleep phase, so this is not a contributive factor. And do we experience sleep inertia because we wake up between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. of your acclimatization time zone? The period between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. is the circadian low period of the night where we are very prompt to sleep. The deep sleep has more chance to pop up in this period, and it is very hard to counteract the sleep pressure. In flight, programming a nap in this period may increase sleep inertia. Is there a chance to experience sleep inertia in case of sleep debt before a nap? As explained, the sleep is composed of 5 stages, from light sleep to REM. One sleep cycle lasts around 1 hour and 30 minutes. In case of sleep debt or long period of wakefulness, the pilot could fall in deep sleep phase quicker. Why? Because the body needs really restoration, so it is a contributive factor. Do we experience sleep inertia with sleeping pills? Yes, some sleeping drugs reinforce deep sleep, and taking this drug without control may increase sleep inertia after a nap, mainly in case of forced awakening due to an alarm clock. If we meditate before a nap, do we experience sleep inertia? No. The meditation relaxes and eases falling asleep, That's all. To conclude, when you wake up from a deep sleep or REM phase, you have chance to experience sleep inertia. And some factors may increase this effect, like wake up between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. of your acclimatization time zone, sleep debt, and consumption of some sleeping pills. So, other questions. Can we say that the sleep inertia is no use? Is it a nonsense? Is it a forgotten process in the human evolution? I don't think so, according to some academic papers. In deep sleep, what's happened in our head? Is it a rest period for our brain? Some regions of our brain are active during the sleep, and in deep sleep, the brain is really active, but is not dealing with the external world. It is internally focused. Scientists also observe that the blood flow in the brain is lower in deep sleep compared to awake state. So, what are the scientific assumptions for explaining sleep inertia? First, sleep inertia would be a protection of the brain to avoid the brutal transition from one state to another. It takes around 25 minutes to reach a deep sleep phases. Maybe the same lapse of time is necessary to back to the waking state and to reverse the mechanism. Second, sleep inertia will be a process maintaining the sleep in the later part of the night when some sleep disturbance, sleep substance disappear in our body. So, upon awakening, brain mechanism switches slowly from deep sleep to awake state. And it is important to note that the brain region takes a longer time to return to waking state. This region, called prefrontal cortex, is a headquarters of our higher cognitive functions. These cognitive functions are, for instance, human detection, interpretation, decision-making, and execution. Last question on science. Do you know what is the duration of the sleep inertia? Few minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? All answers are correct. Its duration is variable, but just retain that most of the effects are dissipated in the first 20 minutes after wake up. Sleep inertia will reflect a smooth reactivation of our cognitive functions in the brain. Our brain is focused internally to restore itself and organize information of the day. The inertia could be light or severe. I'm going to expose the severe aspect because, as pilot, you have to consider it in your duty in an aircraft. So for this, I'm going to explain several kinds of impacts: physical one, feeling, and performance. First of all, the physical signs of sleep inertia. The first one is dry eyes, itchy eyes. Is it due to the fact there is not enough tear production during the light and deep sleep phases? You have also maybe blurry and disturbing vision. You can see something different from the reality. You can also observe a long eye closure and this leads to inaction, no reaction to ATC message or no reaction to the call out of the other pilot. You can also experience to stay in front of the cockpit without thinking. The eyes are opened, but the brain is closed. The speech can be slow and may be difficult too. And this has an impact on exchanges in terms of organization and easy to understand what is told. The other signs in terms of physical sign is yawning after the sleep. Some studies suggest that yawning stimulates alertness by cooling the brain and by increasing the blood flow in the head area, including the brain. Now, the feeling signs. You are groggy. You are even in a bad mood. You feel a strong desire to return to sleep. You are disoriented. Where am I? What time is it? You may be aware that you cannot interpret the situation and this gives you stress. You may have startle reaction after an inadvertent sleep or after a noise. Why? Because the brain is gradually connecting to the external world, and you have to be aware of your emotional state and wait for 20 minutes for recovery. Now the performance signs. So the first one is the routine of actions. The routine of actions like follow a flight director target or enter data on the perf page of the FMS should come easily because the routine is an automatic behavior very well synchronized. But what seems more complicated, it is a check or the control that the routine is correctly applied. That means at the right time, on the right area, with the right value. Why? Because the attentional resources are gradually reactivated. So you may, for example, grasp a not correct control, select a not accurate setting, have a delayed reaction time, close the eyes if time lapse between two actions. What is also complicated is a simple mental calculation for some minutes. Memorizing a set of figures like ATC frequency or a speed value may be difficult too. You may spend time to interpret a set of data or to find what is new. You are in the front of your navigation display and you didn't understand where you are. Or you are convinced that terrain is displayed, but it is a weather display in front of you. Why? Because the cognitive function become gradually available. And attention, interpretation, sense making are at low level, and you have to wait for 20 minutes. To summarize, in case of severe sleep inertia, which is not systematic after a sleep, the routine of action should be preserved. But pilot can experience perceptive bias, lack of motivation, lack of action control, or difficulties of reasoning. And the most effects are dissipated around 20 minutes after wake-up. The question is now how to deal with sleep inertia in an aircraft. So I give the floor to Jérôme Rodriguez.
Thank you, Florence. So, Florence has just shown us the main contributing factors of sleep inertia. So let's put these contributing factors into perspective on an actual example. First of all, let's consider the timeline on which crews are acclimatized, which may be, as you already know, different from the local time. On this timeline, let's represent a long-range flight within a flight duty period of 10 hours during the night, and then the return flight with an equivalent scheme. As you can see here, crews will have to rest during the day. The acclimatized night is represented in gray, which covers a period of 8 hours, falling, depending on the regulation for sure, between 22 p.m. and 8 a.m. Within that period, the most critical zone, as explained by Florence, falls down between 2 and 6 a.m. in the acclimatized time zone reference. Having that said, first contributing factor is wake up in deep sleep. This factor is more likely to happen at night, but also appears during daytime. And for the nap, the regulation limits its duration. This means that the regulation can be seen as a barrier that eliminates the threat for the nap. Therefore, this contributing factor is particularly true for the in-flight rest, since its duration is much longer. Second main contributing factor is wake up between 2 and 6 a.m. of your acclimatized time zone. This obviously can happen after a nap or after an in-flight rest. Third main contributing factor is sleep debt before a nap. Obviously, this can happen before the first flight on this example, depending on the planning of the flight group. But here, it's most likely to happen after the daytime rest, which, as you know, is less restorative than the nighttime sleep. Focusing on the flight now, and more specifically on the cruise flight phase. The nap or in-flight rest opportunity, depending on the regulations, must be taken during cruise and must terminate at least 30 minutes before the top of descent. As mentioned before, the nap should not exceed 45 minutes which consider an actual sleep time of 30 minutes. To avoid sleep inertia having an impact on crew's duty, a minimum of 20 minutes is required after this 45 minutes nap. This may also be applicable after an in-flight rest, which is actually longer than a nap, but it's not yet addressed by the regulation. Last but not least, between two naps or in-flight rest, a minimum of 20 minutes must be respected. In a nutshell, 3 points to remember. Firstly, apply the regulation, which contains all the necessary rules to prevent a contributing factor to escalate to an incident. Secondly, train your flight crews to recognize the symptoms, the causes, and the potential effects of sleep inertia. The elements provided within this presentation can be used for sure to populate your training materials or syllabus. Thirdly, provide a guidance within your operation manuals, not only because these rules must be clearly known and understood by flight crews, but also because, and we haven't covered that aspect in the presentation, briefings must be done before and after a nap or an in-flight rest for sure, to avoid a discontinuity in the situational awareness. It's a good practice to cover these briefings within your operating manuals. These are the 3 main recommendations to be pursued to avoid sleep inertia to escalate to an incident. Now, I will leave the floor back to Florence for the final wrap-up. Florence?
To conclude, sleep inertia is on our DNA. It will always exist. Sleep inertia is not systematic after a nap. Sleep inertia can be less severe if contributing factors are well managed. But around 20 minutes after wake-up, main effects are dissipated because the brain switches off working mode. You recover main part of the high cognitive function of your brain. Training and regulation on the nap and the rest help you maintain efficient performance. And don't hesitate to share your tips with us and the other pilots. And the final words is, the more you are aware, the more you are prepared.